I got to tell you something. So I went down a rabbit hole recently. You ever heard of a prediction market? Can you legally trade on the outcome of a March Madness game like it's a stock? And why is the NCAA sending a cease and desist letter to a federally regulated financial platform right now? I got some of the answers to all three of those questions, and they are wilder than you think. Let's get into it. You have now joined the Education Evolution, and you're listening to Tech Evolution. This is a podcast for the thinkers, the doers, and those who understand that the most important lessons aren't always learned in school. I'm Hadi Ha, but you can call me Mr. Jihad, and this is the episode where we break down the technology that is reshaping how we learn, how we think, and how we engage with the world around us. Because as a former teacher who spent years inside classrooms and school systems, I know this. Technology does not wait for institutions to catch up. It just keeps moving. Real quick, I need a favor. Not from strangers, but from you specifically. We have been working towards 600 YouTube subscribers for a minute now. And the thing about building something real is that it doesn't happen from just one big moment. It happens from people who find value in something and they tell somebody else about it. So if you are here and this podcast has ever made you think differently, ask better questions, or look at something from a different perspective or lens, please tell someone about this. Send them this episode, share it on your story, leave a comment, do something, because that's how we're going to get this to 600 subscribers and continue to grow. All right, down the rabbit hole we go. So here's where I want to start. A few weeks ago, the NCAA, which is the organization that runs college athletics, including the tournament that's kicking off this week, sent a formal request to a financial platform called Kalshi. The request: stop using the phrase March Madness. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a standard trademark dispute, but when you dig into the why the NCAA was so bothered, that's where the story starts to get interesting. So Kalshi is a federally regulated prediction market, and it has been letting people trade on the outcome of the tournament legally in all 50 states, generating over $36 million in trading volume this year. And the NCAA is like, and it's not because of the trademark, but because prediction markets represent something that the NCAA has been spending decades trying to control: the money, the financial conversation around their games. First, they said athletes could not profit off their own name. NIL changed that. And if you haven't listened to this month's Hall Pass to the Real World episode yet, go check that one out, because we get deep on what that shift means for young athletes right now, and starts here in DC. Now, people are trading on game outcomes through a federally regulated exchange, and the NCAA can't stop it. That's the tension. That's the context for everything that we're going to be talking about today. So let me break down what prediction markets actually are, because once you understand them, you're going to start seeing them everywhere. So when I first heard trading on outcomes, my immediate thought was, oh yeah, that's gambling, full stop. And honestly, after I did some more digging, it was a fair place to land. But on the surface, it sounds exactly like it. But here's the distinction that actually changed how I thought about it. Think about traditional sports betting like this. You pick a team, you hand your money to a company, and if your team wins, they pay you. If your team loses, they keep your money. That company always makes sure that the math is working in their favor, no matter what the outcome of the game is. That's sports betting. Prediction markets, they work differently. There is no company that's taking your money and deciding whether you win or lose. Instead, you are trading with other regular people who are just like you. They just have different opinions about what's going to happen. Think of it like this. If I think that Duke is going to win the championship and you think that they're not, we can make a trade. I buy the yes, Duke wins contract. You buy the no, they don't. And whoever is right collects. Sounds simple, right? There's no house. There's no company with an edge. Just people putting money behind what they actually believe. And here's what makes it legal in a way that traditional betting is not everywhere. Kalshi operates under the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CTFC. That's the same federal body that oversees the stock market. And this means that it's classified as a financial contract, not a bet, which shows that this is a fundamentally different product. And so once I understood that, I started to ask a different question entirely, because prediction markets are not just about sports. This is the part of the conversation that I think most people miss when they first hear about this. Yes, people are trading on March Madness right now. Over $36 million in volume just on this tournament this year. And last year, during the opening round, that number hit $208 million. But the markets generating the highest volume on these platforms right now are not sports at all. They're the question of how long will the government shutdown last? And if you didn't know, yes, the government is actively shut down. The question, what will the Federal Reserve do with interest rates? Who will lead the Trump administration next? What is the probability of a recession by the end of the year? These are real world questions that affect real people's lives. And prediction markets are essentially crowdsourcing the probability of outcomes in real time. And here's what makes it genuinely interesting. When thousands of people who have something personally at stake are collectively pricing the likelihood of an event, that signal can actually be more accurate than any single expert prediction alone. This concept is called the wisdom of crowds. It's this idea that a large group of informed people making independent decisions together will often get closer to the truth than just one person, no matter how smart that person is. And I think that's fascinating, especially as an educator, because we're living at a moment of serious information overload where everybody has a take, an agenda, and it's genuinely hard to know what we should be filtering out. Prediction markets do not tell you what is true, but they do show you what a large group of people who have thought about it and put something behind their opinion collectively believe is likely to happen. And that's a different kind of signal that is worth paying attention to. But here's where I have to be a little honest about my own hesitation. Because as much as I appreciate the real world application here, and I genuinely do, my mind goes somewhere else almost immediately. So there was a reported case where someone placed a trade on a prediction market on whether the Venezuelan regime would fall before the operation against Nicolas Maduro became public knowledge. And they made money off of it anonymously. Now think about that for a second. That is not the wisdom of crowds. That is someone with access to information the rest of us did not have, trading on it before it became news. What does that sound like? Yeah. It reminded me immediately of the conversation we've been having for years about politicians trading on the stock market. We know what happens. We've seen the timing of certain trades right before major policy announcements. But because the legal definition of insider trading is narrow and enforcement is selective, most of those people are never held accountable. So the money stays and the trade stands. And prediction markets have that same vulnerability. Maybe even more so because the anonymity that's built into some of these platforms, it make it harder to trace who knew what and when. So yes, I do see the value and I see the real world math applications. However, I also see what it means to give people a tool to engage with information in a more tangible way. But access to a powerful tool does not automatically mean that the playing field will be level. It just means there's a new arena where the same old advantages can show up in new ways. And that is something we need to be clear-eyed about as we get into the platforms themselves, because depending on what you're looking for, one's going to make more sense for you than the other. But before I get into this, I got to be clear. Jihad is not a financial advisor. Nothing I say in this episode should be taken as financial advice or even an encouragement to invest. I am breaking down these platforms purely from an educational standpoint so that you understand what they are. What you decide to do with that information is completely your call. Okay, so there's two platforms that really are dominating this prediction market conversation, Kalshi and Polymarket. And they're very different from each other. Kalshi is the one that you are most likely to encounter if you're based in the US. It is federally regulated, meaning the government has oversight over how it operates, and there are consumer protections in place. You can sign up the same way that you would for any normal app. You fund it like a regular account, and the markets cover everything from sports to politics to economics. It's designed to be accessible to the average person. Polymarket is different. It runs on cryptocurrency. So to use it, you already need to be comfortable in that world. It operates globally and has some of the most active political markets anywhere. During major events like elections, mainstream news outlets have started to actually cite Polymarket odds as a real-time indicator of what people collectively believe is going to happen. But it operates in a less regulated environment. And for US users specifically, the legal landscape around it is still being figured out. Now, here's what I want you to take from both of those descriptions. Regulation is not just a technicality. It is the difference between having some recourse if something goes wrong and having none. Kalshi having federal oversight does not mean it is risk-free, but it does mean there is a framework that's designed to protect you that does not exist on every platform. And the anonymity that makes Polymarket attractive to some people, the same anonymity that I mentioned in the last section when we talked about the Maduro situation, that cuts both ways. It protects privacy, but it also can protect bad actors. Before anyone engages with either of these platforms, understand what you are walking into. Make sure you know the difference between regulated and unregulated, and you need to understand that these are real financial instruments and real money is involved. That is not me trying to tell you to stay away from it. That is just me trying to make sure that you are informed enough to make your own decision. And knowing how to evaluate a tool before you use it, that's all I'm trying to teach you today on this episode. Here's where I want to land before we close. I am not here to tell you to go put money on a bracket. What I am here to tell you is that prediction markets represent a real shift in how information works. And that shift is already happening whether we engage with it or not. We are living in a moment where trust in traditional institutions and even media is at a historic low. People do not know what to believe. Algorithms are feeding everyone a different version of their own reality, and the loudest voices are not always the most informed ones. And what prediction markets do, imperfectly but genuinely, is give us a way to see what a large group of people who are paying close attention actually believe is going to happen. It's not what the headline says, it's not what the loudest person in the room says, but what people who have thought about it and put something behind their opinion collectively believe. And that is a different kind of information. And in the world that we're living in right now, that matters. As educators, as lifelong learners, as people who are trying to make sense of a world that feels like it's moving faster than we can keep up with, understanding these tools matter. And it's not because you need to use them, but because the ability to evaluate the evidence, to be able to think in probabilities, and to resist reacting emotionally to every piece of information that comes, these are life skills. They belong in classrooms. They belong in how we raise our kids. They belong in how we move through the world as adults. That is the real lesson here. March Madness just made it easier to see. The NCAA tried to shut Kalshi down over a trademark, but you cannot trademark a shift in how people engage with information. Prediction markets are here. They are federally regulated. They are growing, and they are about to become part of how mainstream America processes everything from sports to politics to economics. So the question is not whether this technology matters. The question is whether you understand it well enough to engage with it critically. Now, I got to hear from you. Did you know prediction markets were legal and federally regulated before this episode? Would you try Kalshi or Polymarket? And if so, what would you trade on first? And do you think prediction markets are a smarter way to process information or just a new kind of noise? Drop it below. You know I'll be in the comments. If this episode taught you something you did not know before you press play, subscribe. Share it. Send it to someone who would find it useful. We are pushing for 600 by the end of March. Please help us get there. The world, as you can see, is full of information, but knowledge is knowing what to do with it. Stay curious, stay critical, and keep learning. And if this sent you down your own rabbit hole, good. That means it worked, because the most dangerous thing in the world is a tool you do not understand. I'm Hadi Had. You can call me Mr. Jihad. Take care of yourselves.